On the 5th anniversary of the tragic death of Alan Kurdi, we share about Syrian refugees and community sponsorship, collaborative social justice and interfaith chaplaincy, and the intersectionality between them all. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How are you all doing today? I hope wherever you are in a warm and balmy place with lovely conditions. Today, my guest is the Reverend David Butterworth. We've just been chatting here about how life is fragile. And David, he said I can call him that. He's a social justice advocate, brothers and sisters. He says he likes to spread love, neighbors and strangers. He likes to celebrate equality, ethnicities, all as a Methodist minister. Welcome. How are you today, David? And where are you?
Assalamu alaikum. I'm very well, thank you. I'm based in Birmingham at the moment in the West Midlands, and very happy to be here in Europe's largest city. And it's diverse and cosmopolitan and rich and kind and generous-hearted place to be.
Well, that is a whole heap of words that as a British person, I personally have never heard applied to Birmingham. So I apologize now to Birmingham for thinking so lowly of you and just to flyovers. We are here today because we're going to be discussing social justice, brothers and sisters, and really I want to look at, with you, David, about faith, what we have to offer in this complex society that we now live in, and especially in relation to refugees. How did you get involved, David, with the question of welcoming refugees to the UK, and how difficult is that at the moment?
It goes back quite a number of years ago. My first introduction to people in a severe plight was in Croatia some years ago, and visiting Croatia when the bombs were still going off and the landmines were still there. So my heart grew for people that were in trouble. And I didn't see lines of refugees. I saw my family. And when people were being dragged on bits of polythene or stretchers, I saw my aunts and my grandparents and my family, my children. So they were no longer the other. They were part of me. And I really mean that sincerely. So moving into Birmingham 6-7 years ago, I became very much part of a program, a non-partisan operation called Citizens UK. The Methodist Church in Birmingham had signed up to be an institutional member of Citizens UK Birmingham, albeit it's a national program. And so in that context, I met people that were refugees already. I met kinder transport, elderly ladies and elderly gentlemen. And so when the call came, who will help? I can remember a really well-known Methodist guy called Mike King years ago saying, if not you, who? In a sense, meaning if you don't make the response to help, who will make that response? And so thankfully, it fell to me. And I was glad and privileged to be able to articulate the big questions to Birmingham City Council on behalf of Eritreans and Somalians and people of an Islamic tradition or a Christian tradition or a Judaism tradition, and knock on the door of some of these big offices to say, Brummies want this to happen. And it was one of those power situations. We represented countless thousands of people in Birmingham wanting refugees to be given sanctuary.
This is not a story that is widely told. I mean, at the moment, unfortunately, if you think of Britain, you don't think of welcoming refugees. You think of Brexit, you think of Nigel Farage, you think of really quite unpleasant use of what should be moving photos of human beings queuing for survival rations being made to look like they're flocking to the United Kingdom to take away our resources. How do we cope, I wonder, with that negative selfishness that's arising in society?
Be strong enough, be bold enough together, collaboratively with people of several faiths and people of perhaps no faith as well, because people of faith are not the private owners of love and generosity. and say, we can do this together. Who do we represent? And so I represent countless Methodist people across the wider Birmingham region. We have 150 Methodist churches. But then I represent through collaborative relationships with Citizens UK and others, mosques, gurdwaras, synagogues, temples, Baha'i families. And we say to our civic leaders, we demand some of your time, and we want to challenge you and encourage you to listen to what we have to say. And we only speak words of authenticity because we've taken the time and the trouble to invest time listening to grassroots people, rather than just those in the corridors of Parliament or the corridors of Westminster or the corridors of Birmingham City Council with a particular flavour. I stress that we do this with a non-partisan platform to represent everybody with whom we have contact with.
There must have been some kind of push and pull, though, either in the community or from the politicians. What were the more negative aspects that you had to face when trying to get families over? And we'll talk about the specific scheme, brothers and sisters, because you can actually get involved with this in helping refugees right now in camps in Europe, in I think Turkey and Lebanon as well, on UNHCR lists. Yes. Who can leave. You can help them to get a fresh start. What were what kind of tribulations did you have with the local council, and how did you call people's? Did you go appeal to their heart, their pockets? What did you do?
Both. But we met them. That was the beauty. It wasn't an email thing. It was a eye contact to eye contact. It was a heart contact to a heart contact, and there was a business case as well. And that people of Britain have always been proud to be offering sanctuary to countless thousands of people. And I mentioned in passing just earlier the Kinder Transport community.
You explain what that is, just in case people aren't familiar.
Yeah, Kinder Transport people communities. Britain opened its borders and hearts to something like 30,000 Jewish children that were at risk of being put into death camps, killed in many different ways. And Britain opened its heart, and railway trains brought hundreds and thousands of young Jewish children into Britain. And they travelled all over Oxford, London, Manchester, some of the islands, Anglesey off the coast of Wales. And there are many in Birmingham. And now, of course, they're older. I call them statespeople because they've got so much wisdom. And they're so British in their culture and so pleased and proud that Britain gave them a new life, and that they were able to grow up knowing they were loved by the local communities, going to local schools to be educated beautifully, and then to marry or have relationships with other people. And then, of course, have their own children and grandchildren now. And some of the Kinder Transport people are clearly still Jewish, lovely Jewish people. But some of them will still be going to the Methodist Church on Sunday because it was Methodist people that gave them sanctuary in the time of World War II. And so clearly they still go to their synagogues for all of the events and worship times with their own lovely rabbis. But because of the love that they received in the Methodist Church and other spaces and places as well of faith, they still continue going to the Methodist Church on a Sunday to say thank you to God.
Mashallah. You know, I've noticed in your talk you use the word love a lot. I'm so used to hearing in conversations now words like worth, economics, bottom line, but the word love isn't used that widely, is it?
Well, I'd like to perhaps gently challenge you on that, because that's what the popular press might say. It's bottom line, it's numbers, it's values, it's worth, it's
economy stupid, as Clinton said in the 1980s.
Yeah. So when I meet civic dignitaries or city council leaders or Labour Party, Conservative Party, whichever party leaders they are, they've got a beating heart. They've got families, they've got dreams, and they've got visions. And when you speak from a humanitarian context, and you speak about the Kindertransport, lovely people, and you speak about the children in Calais, they'd have to be the frozen ice person to say this doesn't matter to them. It does matter, but of course, sometimes they can't see how they can actually open that door. So by joining together with mosques, many mosques in Birmingham and Wolverhampton, with synagogues, with churches, with faith groups, with no faith groups, with trade unions, collaboratively underneath an umbrella that has got a 25, 26-year track record for social justice, then the councillors and the city leaders can see, wow, these people have got some power and some clout, and they know what the grassroots people are looking for. Let me give you a really lovely example. We met in a United Reformed Church and a Methodist Church, and we asked a choir. There's one in London, there's one in Manchester, there's one in Birmingham, and the choir is called Choir with No Name. Generally, it comprises people that have come from a drug or a drink or some form of abuse background, and they've rekindled their life into a shape. And some of them are homeless, some of them have been homeless, and we asked them to, would you support refugees coming into Birmingham? They, without a shadow of a doubt, said yes. In fact, when you have your big event, your big assembly, to challenge city councillors and others and members of parliament, we will come and we will sing. Mm-hmm. And so they came, 40 people strong, and they sang from their hearts that they wanted to give refugees a really good welcome in Birmingham.
That's really powerful. Can we find the recording of that anywhere online?
We can find a recording of that from somewhere, or a similar recording, and there's photographic evidence and a photo trail.
I think I'd like to hear that song. Maybe we should ask them to sing it again underneath this when we repost it. Let's put a link to that work, because there's some places. I'm somebody who works in the arts myself. I trained as an actor, and I've recently gone back to that to give positive messages. You know, there's places where the arts go where polemic can never ever reach.
Yes,
so you have presented that. I bet people were tearful. I bet
they are. Yeah, I'm goosebumpy now talking to you, because what we've done in Birmingham is not just me. I'm one of many people, but thank God I've been given the opportunity to speak and encounter this lovely time with your good self.
You know what? I'm hearing you, Reverend, saying, thank God. May Allah forgive me. I hope I started this with Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, which is really, really important. And I love to hear it when people do use God's name in order to invoke blessing, because I think it's kind of unfashionable. People have let that drop, and if you're in the mainstream, how many times a day do you actually hear God spoken about? So I just want to thank you for reminding me to keep mentioning God. So
absolutely, please do. I've been in many various faith contexts with people of different faith positions, and I've often started to speak about faith and God, and people will sometimes say, well, would you like to pray? Naturally, I want to pray all the time. So with imams and rabbis and Catholic priests, and with people of no faith, we've held hands with refugees, all Muslim refugees from Syria, and their children. We've held hands and we've prayed a prayer of blessing upon each other. Sometimes we're hesitant about highlighting our faith, and I just said yesterday on one of our social media platforms that, let's be braver about showing our hearts and our minds on our sleeves. It's an old-fashioned saying, he shows his heart on his sleeve. And well, I'm proud of doing that, because if people see you have a heart, then it allows them, or it gives them permission to speak from their heart as well.
And you know what? People always talk about what we're attached to. So if somebody, loves a certain kind of tea or a certain kind of shop or a certain person, they will crowbar it into every conversation. But somehow we people of faith have sort of rolled back remembering to let people know that we love God and that we enjoy saying his name, and that's part of us. So yeah, that's really, really nice to hear.
Good. I've been in some circles when I've said the prayer with several rabbis and several imams, and said a prayer, and I think sometimes they thought it might just be a courtesy prayer, and they've said it. Wow, that was a real prayer. But what other sorts of prayer are there? You know, even the groans of our souls, God hears and understands. Sometimes when we can't articulate the words that we can't find the words, so how can we articulate it? But God knows.
Yes, he's closer than our jugular vein.
Yes,
is the understanding that Muslims have.
Yeah.
Loneliness is being talked about now, finally, in political circles, and it reminds me that when we are struggling to bring people into our society, there's a lot of talk, for example, in the mainstream, of Muslims integrating, of people of faith. You've got to integrate with society. But I wonder if you have any thoughts about integrating with a disintegrating society. Sheikh Abdul Hakim Murad has just written a very interesting book, which I'll flash up on the screen in a little while, talking about the experience for Muslims in the UK. How do you align yourself with something that seems to be fragmenting?
I've not pre-thought this answer to that question because you've not presented the question before to me. But as you were speaking, I was thinking of my grandchildren, or me, or you, when we were little. Yeah. Sometimes you'd walk down the high street and you'd play a game, let's avoid the cracks. Other times it would be, let's only walk where we can stand on a crack. Clearly, communities are fragile, but actually, if we come from a firm place of love and understanding and wishing to cherish the other, then wherever we go, we take that foundation with us. And the encounter with the other is not about us, it's about them. One of my roles in the wider area is a chaplain to a significant business in Birmingham, and supporting chaplaincy in several wider businesses and universities in the region of the West Midlands as well. And clearly, chaplaincy is never about the chaplain. It's always about the other that you are encountering, and you listen and you listen and you listen. And if there's any time at the end, you continue listening and then reflecting. What we found with the Syrian refugees that came into Birmingham was that whilst the gift of the air flights and the gift of the accommodation was found and sourced, there wasn't the gift of the community to support them. So thank God, again, I stayed very close with some of the refugees, and we became very close friends within a very short period of time. They will always remain of an Islamic tradition, and I will always remain, I think, a Christian tradition. But we came together like this, and they landed in the summer, and autumn was coming like it is now, and we know, because we're British, that winter's going to be really awful. So I said, I knew they were meeting in public parks to gather together to try and rekindle that fractured, broken relationship from Syria and Jordan and other places. And I said, but the winter's coming. And so I rang one of my friends, Reverend Helen, in an area of Birmingham called Lozelles. It's well known in the wider Birmingham region. And I said, Helen, I need a space and a place so that 50 refugees can meet there every Saturday, and that we can come and help them and answer questions, encourage them with English lessons, and developing some understanding of British culture, slowly but surely. And Helen said immediately, the answer is yes. And I said, but Helen, thank you for the yes, but I've got no money. The Syrian refugees have no money. They can't pay to rent the hall. And she said, it doesn't matter. Tell them they're welcome. So over a period of, when the first 50 arrived, most of those 50 came to Lozelles Methodist Church. And we
what year was that? Talk us through the process.
That would be.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. I just want to say that this is to do with the community sponsorship scheme. So if you're watching,
no, that was with the refugee program.
Refugee program. Oh, so that was before 2016.
Yes, about 2015, 2014 discussions were taking place, and so we could give them sanctuary and food and a welcome, and children could run around, and the boys could play billiards, and the girls could do whatever they would want to do, and people just mixed and collaborated. We taught them one Christmas or one gathering how to do the hokey cokey, which they
it's a bizarre thing even for British people, but it's a bit of fun. And
it broke a lot of ice, and so. With the local Rabbi Margaret Jacobi, and local other people from that area, they started to feel that they were loved and that they are loved. And some of those relationships are still continuing today. The community sponsorship program is a Canadian model of receiving people from agreed and approved refugee status into a particular country. And for the last 40 plus years, Canada, in particular, has been exemplary in this community sponsorship program, and it was talked about in Britain perhaps 4 years ago when I was starting to hear all about it, and I knew very little about it, but I thought this has the seed of something wonderful, that a local community could raise funds to actually chaperone and become the family of a refugee family from Syria.
And tell me about the specifics of that, because, for example, you raise about £9,000, I think.
Yes.
And then the people are, the arrangements are made between the government and the United Nations refugee program, and then they arrive at an airport. What next?
Well, let me take you back one step, because some are given the permissions to come and climb on the airplane to come from Jordan or somewhere else, where they've been in a war-torn context for 3 or 4 years. Some climb the steps of the aeroplane, and because it's the last goodbye to their families and their friends in Syria or Jordan, some say, we can't go, we can't leave grandma, we can't leave granddad, and so they go back down the steps. So the people that do fly to Britain and arrive at Birmingham Airport or wherever else it might be are so brave and strong-spirited to be able to do that when they do not generally speak a syllable of English. And so it's not a great hurrah to meet people at the airport, because generally they would not understand what you were saying. It needs to be a gentle inclusion and welcome.
And I guess this is where your work, though, with the mosques must come in, because of course there would be people at the mosque who would speak Arabic.
Well, in the beginning, not many mosques were that interested. They've got a lot on their plate, and their structure didn't enable them to be involved in one way or another. But just oddly, it's strange that we're having this conversation, because yesterday it was sadly and tragically, the 5th anniversary of little Alan Kurdi dying when his body was washed up on the beach. And they had applied to be a community sponsorship family, but somehow were declined. So the people that we met on the community sponsorship program coming to Britain, we really wanted them to know desperately they were loved. And myself and one of my colleagues, a lady called Sue Ford, met them at the airport with a Syrian refugee driving a minibus. And we had a sign just saying warm welcome. And we'd prepared accommodation for them that they could live in for the next 2 years. The cupboards were filled with food. We'd gone to various shops in parts of Birmingham to get special food.
What a lovely thing to do. The people doing that, it's the best. Yeah, they must have loved doing it. They're like this, and you get the children involved. Yeah.
Well, the children of the Syrian refugee families that were meeting at Lozel's Methodist Church, they painted hearts and cards saying welcome, and pretty pictures from little children. So when the family moved into their accommodation, which was a ground floor 2-bedroom flat in a very quiet, safe space, their room was filled with 50 cards saying welcome, 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 welcome. And Sue that I spoke of earlier, she'd organized all of the fabrics, and she'd been to shops to buy clothes for the little girl and shops to buy clothes for the little boy, gifts for the husband, and a laptop for the family, and a television. And community sponsorship is amazing. And it revolves around two words: community, like wide community, and sponsorship, so that you have the community, which is the heartbeat of the program, but then the sponsorship enables the funding to be there to make sure that they're secure for the next 2 years, whilst they're trying to understand and learn English, and find schools and dentists and job centres and driving licenses and health conditions.
The technical stuff of life when you move abroad. I've done it a lot. It's, as a journalist, I can't fill the forms in. I don't know how anybody else does it, let alone second or third language.
Yeah. And the thing is, you know, if you've come from Syria, like 550 of them did come, or through Jordan, and they get letters from the wonderful Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Birmingham that does a lot of crisis and trauma stuff, and injuries from soldiers and other people on frontline stuff. Of course, all the letters come in English. So how is a Syrian person that doesn't read English going to read the letter? Or if a Syrian mum is 8 or approaching 9 months term in her pregnancy, how is she going to get to the hospital when she goes into labor? It's all of these natural things that need to be taken care of. You know, it may be sensitive to some ears, but we need to speak about practicalities. When some of the ladies came from Syria, where would they get tampons and sanitary wear from? Nobody tells people that sort of thing. And welcome packs need to be practical as well as lovely. So practical with gifts of soap, but, you know, tampons and sanitary towels are crucially important to women of a certain age.
And you know what, just arriving somewhere and being welcomed by people who live there can make you not feel like a stranger.
Yeah.
And as Muslims already in the West, we can feel strange a lot of the time, but a single smile in a day, a single I see you, you know, a meeting of eyes, I'm telling you, it makes the world of difference to people born here. Yeah. I can only imagine what it feels to be hugged and respected, and to be made to feel a sense of belonging.
Yeah.
Do you have any specific stories you'd like to share about some of the children arriving, or some of the cases that you've seen?
The community sponsorship family specifically, a lovely mum and dad, 2 little children, both of them drop dead gorgeous, delightful family. They arrived at Birmingham Airport. They were nervous and they were looking around at all the signs that they couldn't read. We'd been given a code to let them know who we were. They'd been given our photographs and stuff like that. And there were some other sort of secret passwords and stuff, so they knew that they were safe. And we climbed into the minibus with Loué, a Syrian refugee, driving the minibus that we'd got from another one of our churches for nothing, for free, because funding is not plentiful. And the little boy, who could speak a little bit of English, said, you should call this place heaven.
Allah.
Yeah, not Birmingham. He said, not Birmingham. You should call it heaven. And he, for the journey to their accommodation, he just repeatedly said to us, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. That's enough food to let you continue working in the world of refugees for 1,000 years.
Absolutely, absolutely. What's your message to British people about faith communities, what we have to offer, and how we can move forward now to unify our nation and be the generous people that God has made us?
I think what we have to offer is not uniquely ours. Often faith institutions steer clear of civic organizations. I'll give you a specific example. To try and get several faith institutions around a table is never easy. It will always look too male-centered or too patriarchal. Women will always look as though they're excluded. Where are the young people? All of those sorts of questions. But give you an example of the West Midlands. The West Midlands, like areas of Manchester, has its own mayor. It's not a Lord Mayor. It's a mayoral title in a business capacity to draw the body of the people together of the West Midlands. And again, I'm being non-partisan, but he started at the beginning of COVID in January a faith forum, and it was faith and health. So the mayor, Andy Street, and Dr. Varney, the public health.
Andy Street or Andy Burnham?
Andy Street.
Oh.
And Andy Burnham's in Liverpool.
Oh,
and he's doing some good stuff as well.
Yes,
so Andy Street and the public health official, Dr. Varney, they drew people in from Gurdwaras and faith positions and mosques and synagogues. And so they would have, like we are on Zoom, half a dozen different people. I was on it several times. I presented questions several times. And it starts to show that we can work together. But I'm not so sure how we might work together without that push or that bit of encouragement.
Push from the civic, from
the civic end of the community.
Yeah, it's really tiresome when faith bodies are seen as a burden or a charity case or something rather sweet and Friday or Sunday rather than absolute heart of communities.
Yes, yeah. Sometimes I'm not disparaging now. Interfaith groups will have face painting little things for communities or a cup of tea, but actually there's more to life than face painting. Where's the progression from the cup of tea or the face painting to listen to each other's innermost concerns and anxieties and say, well, actually, we all have similar desires and needs. How can we work together to make this world a better place? And not as it is, but as it should be.
I mean, one of the things that always touches me is the way that this creation is made to actually be fruitful to human beings. What do I mean by that? It's proven that, and we don't need science to prove this because we trust our feelings between us and God. But if you stroke a cat, there are hormones released that actually take away illness in the long term, and the cat feels good as well. If you are around trees and plants actually work together. They harmonize when they've lived together over a certain amount of time. They share resources. Can you imagine?
Well, if you go into hospitals like the QE or Warwick or the Good Hope Hospital near Wolverhampton, people will be taking in dogs with all the right measures and controls and pat dogs, yeah. And they release a lot of goodwill. And of course, as people in a hospital, we can't necessarily touch the patient. There's so many safeguarding issues there. But again, I've mentioned the word and term chaplaincy a few times, but all the hospitals have chaplaincy units in all of them. One of the most wonderful chaplains I've ever met is a Muslim lady called Rihanna. She's one of the senior chaplains at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Birmingham. And she's like an angel on legs. And so when I know people that have gone there from my business chaplaincy programs, I've said, well, if you like me in the business context, you will love Chaplain Rihanna. And they'll say, well, I don't have a faith. And I say, well, you've enjoyed speaking to me. You've come to speak to me. You've heard stories of faith and opportunity and possibility. I'm recommending that you look at another book and speak to Rihanna. And when I've gone to see them in the Queen Elizabeth Hospital sometime later, they've said, thank you so much for introducing me to Chaplain Rihanna.
Beautiful.
Yeah, so beautiful. Yeah. And also, likewise, people of faith are lovely, but people that don't express faith are also lovely. And, I've been to humanist meetings and pagan meetings, and I've been received beautifully and richly in all of those places and spaces.
We, as people of monotheism, recognize that the system works best when we worship one God and when we praise him, and that's what releases the abundance. And so that means that we create these spaces really where we do good. We just do, we're here to do good and to release that, what we call barakah. And I know, of course, in the Christian tradition, that Jesus, our prophet in the Islamic faith, was the epitome of kindness, as was Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And I see in the work that you're doing a reflection of the kindness that we're taught as human beings.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
Is there a link that you'd like us to share to where people can reach to your Methodist community, send you some positive mails, perhaps find out about some of the work that you're doing?
Yeah, perhaps later when you edit it, perhaps we can, I'll give you my email or a Twitter account and be glad to help people. And certainly in the world of interfaith stuff and chaplaincy and community sponsorship, I'd be really delighted to visit almost anywhere to try and help spread that word.
Amazing. By the way, David means this. He will get in. Are you on your car or your bicycle, or a bit of both?
Me?
Yeah.
all three.
Train, plane, scooter, he's your man. We said earlier he's the minister without portfolio, but he's actually got a minister with a very big portfolio. With
a wide creative portfolio, thank God.
Thank God. Take care, David, and thanks for learning about Islam, and I hope to meet you one day soon next time.
Likewise. Yeah, blessings to you.
And to you. Take care.
Thank you.
Brothers and sisters, I hope you take away a lot of beauty from that. My takeaways are that things are not as bleak as we think, that human beings may be challenged, but really there's more good going on. Evil is not winning. And that being kind to others and giving a welcome can change the world. So, and being active within the communities where we live. So tea mornings are good. Visit my mosque days are good. But what are we actually doing to change the world today? By Allah's grace. Take care, brothers and sisters. See you next time, inshallah. Thanks again, David.
Yeah, inshallah. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.